In the winter of 1997, a 15-year-old girl named Amber Redsky vanished near a remote logging road in northern British Columbia. No suspects, no search parties, just snow and silence. For over 2 decades, her case sat frozen, forgotten, until a severed hand was discovered in the forest, wearing her bracelet. That single clue reopened not just her case, but dozens of others. What really happened to the missing girls of Kisele? Who was the man they called Lobo? And why was the town so afraid to speak his name? Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, because the secrets buried beneath the pines are coming to the surface. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Because in towns like this, some stories were never meant to be found. The snow had been falling for 3 straight days, sealing Kisele in a silence so complete it felt like memory. The pine trees stood tall and solemn around the edges of the small northern town, limbs bent under the weight of fresh powder, their dark shapes barely distinguishable from the gray sky. Everything looked half-buried: cars, rooftops, and history. Constable Helena Dupree turned off the engine of her RCMP cruiser at the trailhead marked East Logging Route 42, its faded sign barely visible through the mist. The radio still crackled faintly with weather warnings from the regional dispatcher. Snow expected to keep falling through the weekend. Black ice forming on secondary roads. Use caution, use judgment. She stepped out, boots crunching over hardened snow, the kind that creaked under pressure like a warning. Cold bit at her face, despite the scarf pulled high over her mouth. The sun was rising behind thick cloud, more of a lightning than an illumination. Still, she could see well enough. A hiker, old, wiry flannel jacket soaked at the shoulders, was pacing near the trailhead. "You the one who called it in?" she asked. He stopped and nodded, eyes red-rimmed, breath fogging in fast little bursts. "I didn't know what to do. Figured, hell, I didn't want to touch it." "What exactly did you find?" The man gestured toward the ravine behind him. "Down there, just past the ridge. Looked like a hand, like someone reaching up from the dirt. I thought it was a stick at first. Then I saw the skin." Helena nodded, not asking for further description. She'd seen enough in her 15 years with the RCMP, enough frostbite, hypothermia, overdoses, and violence, to know that up here people didn't always stay buried. The forest had a habit of remembering. She followed him across a narrow path cut through the pines. The snow came up to her knees in places, powder crusted with a layer of ice. No fresh animal tracks, no wind. Just silence and the brittle crack of each step. He stopped at the edge of the ravine, a steep slope covered in white. "There," he said, pointing, "just near that downed tree." Helena stepped forward. She saw it instantly. The hand was sticking up at a crooked angle, fingers curled slightly inward, the nails a bluish gray. Snow clung to the skin like powder. The wrist disappeared into a mound of ice-packed earth. Blood had once pooled around it, now dried into the snow, almost black. She crouched beside it. The hand was small, female, maybe late teens. On the wrist, a band made of colored thread and worn beads had frozen stiff, red, white, and yellow woven in a pattern she knew, a Cree design, a Redsky bracelet. Her heart thudded once in her chest. "Jesus," the hiker muttered behind her. "Is it fresh?" Helena didn't answer. She touched the radio clipped to her coat. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I need forensics at East Trail, marker 42. Human remains located. Partial, suspected homicide. Repeat, suspected homicide." "Copy that, Unit 4. Air support grounded. Nearest mobile forensics team is coming up from Prince George. ETA 3 hours. Helena stared at the hand again. The pines rustled faintly above, disturbed by nothing but gravity. "I'll hold the scene," she said into the radio. "They're not going anywhere." She marked the area with yellow tape and used the warming kit in her cruiser to keep herself functional while she waited. The hiker gave his statement and left, shaken, thankful, looking like a man who just wanted to pretend he'd never seen anything. Most people around here were like that. Helena wasn't. By the time the forensics unit arrived, she'd built a windbreak out of a tarp and snow to shield the evidence from further contamination. The team's lead, Officer Michelle Tsang, knelt beside her and let out a low whistle. "Preserved better than you'd expect. You think it's one of the old cases?" Helena didn't respond right away. She was staring at the bracelet. "Amber Redsky," she said finally, "went missing in the summer of '97, 15 years old, reported walking home from the youth center. Never made it." Tsang looked up sharply. "That's 28 years ago." "I know. Any connection to your sister?" Helena's jaw tensed. "Naomi disappeared 3 months after Amber. Same route, same time of night." Tsang didn't press further. The crew began excavating with soft brushes and heated instruments. Slowly, the snow gave way to the rest of the arm, then the shoulder. The body was curled in a fetal position. No signs of clothing beyond a ripped sweater sleeve. No obvious trauma, yet. But a dark stain had pooled under the back, and when the body shifted during the lift, Helena saw it clearly. A blade wound just under the left shoulder blade. Jagged. Deep. "You don't stab someone back there unless they're running away," Tsang muttered. Helena nodded slowly. "Or unless you're trying to make a point." At the station later that evening, Helena sat in the evidence review room, staring at the processed photos. The bracelet had been bagged separately and labeled Artifact 1A, but she could still see it clearly in her mind. Her mother used to make those bracelets. She'd taught both daughters how to weave them. She remembered Amber and Naomi sitting on the porch, laughing, trying to braid the patterns tighter and tighter, comparing their work. Two girls who wanted to be artists. Two girls the world had let vanish. Helena flipped through the old Redsky file again, thin, barely 5 pages, dismissed as a likely runaway. No interviews past 2 weeks. Search ended after 1 week. Nothing about predators, trafficking, or leads. Not a single note about Naomi's disappearance being related. The handwriting in the file belonged to Sheriff Glenn Rayner, now long retired. He'd once told Helena to stop connecting ghosts. She stood, gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles went white. There were no ghosts here, just bodies no one had bothered to look for. The forensics team had cleared the site by dusk, and the body was en route to the Prince George coroner's office for a full autopsy. Helena remained behind. She stood alone now, her breath steaming in the freezing dusk, staring down the narrow stretch of trail leading deeper into the forest. East Trail 42. An old path, mostly forgotten. Locals said it had once connected the town to a cluster of logging camps 30 miles deeper in the woods. When the mills shut down in the late 90s, the trail fell out of use. No maintenance, no traffic, no reason for anyone to come out this far. Except now, for murder. Helena's boots crunched over the fresh snow as she moved past the taped perimeter. No one had stopped her from returning once the forensics team left. She wasn't just the responding officer. This was her town, her forest, her history. She followed the trail uphill. The old access road was nearly hidden, swallowed by brush and snow, but she could still trace the contour where vehicles had once packed it flat. Tall pine columns rose on either side like cathedral pillars. Snow hung from their limbs in thick sheets, branches bent under the weight of years. Somewhere above, a raven called once, long and sharp. And then silence fell again. Helena walked for 20 minutes before she saw it. A clearing, maybe an acre wide, ringed with fence posts. What remained of the old red birch logging camp stood at its center. 3 buildings, collapsing cabins, and a storage shed, leaned in upon themselves, roofs bowed inward with rot. Nature had started reclaiming everything. Moss clung to the outer walls. Saplings poked through the porch floorboards. but something about it felt wrong. Too clean, too staged. Helena approached the first cabin and pushed open the warped door. The inside smelled of wet wood and old oil. Dust floated in the air, caught in the weak light from a hole in the roof. The floor was swept. Fresh boot prints crossed the center of the room. She crouched. The snow had been light today. Whoever left these prints had been here in the last 24 hours. At the far corner of the room, a tarp had been draped over something. Helena pulled it back. Shoes, dozens of them. Dirty sneakers, cheap flats, winter boots, all different sizes, all women's. Some looked decades old. Cracked leather, dried mud still on the soles. She recognized one pair. Brown canvas, worn down to the heel, blue laces frayed at the ends. Naomi's favorite shoes. Helena felt her pulse thrum behind her eyes. She reached for her radio, but her hand hesitated. No backup, no forensics. No one knew she'd gone past the scene perimeter. She replaced the tarp and kept moving. The second building was worse. Inside, the floorboards had given out, revealing a dark crawl space beneath. A rusted set of shackles lay abandoned in one corner, iron rings nailed to an old timber beam. Nearby, on a wall beam, someone had carved names. She stepped closer. Amber, Naomi, Eliza, T. Cardinal. There were more, dozens, some initials, some full, all carved in different handwriting. Some were shaky, some were deep and jagged. She ran her fingers over them, heart heavy. This wasn't just a logging camp, it had been a holding site. Back in town, Helena parked in front of St. Mary's Elders' home, a squat, brick building on the east side. Inside, the night nurse nodded and pointed down the hall. Second room on the left. She knocked softly. "Come," a voice rasped. Eunice Redsky was 93 years old and had outlived 4 of her 6 children. She sat in a rocking chair, blanket over her knees, her long silver braid draped over her shoulder like a banner. "You found her, didn't you?" she asked. Helena's chest tightened. "We found someone. We believe it's Amber." Eunice closed her eyes. Said nothing. "I was hoping you still had that bracelet she made," Helena said. "To confirm it." Eunice turned toward a wooden box on the nightstand and pulled something from it. A matching bracelet, red, white, yellow beads, worn but intact. "She made 2, Eunice said. "One for me, one for Naomi. Said she wanted you to have one too, but she never finished yours. Said she wanted to make it perfect." Helena took the bracelet gently. "Thank you." Eunice's gaze sharpened. "They're still out there." "Who?" "The ones who took her. The ones who take all our girls. Everyone stopped looking, but I didn't. The Pines remember, Constable. You listen long enough, they'll tell you where the bones are buried." Helena stayed for a long moment, watching the old woman gently rock back and forth. Later that night, back at the station, Helena spread the old missing persons files across her desk. Naomi, Amber, Eliza Cardinal, Tina Redbear, Jolene Reeve. All had gone missing between 1995 and 2001. All were indigenous, all were labeled runaways, and none were followed up after a month. She opened Amber's file again. Tucked in the back was a photocopied note, one she hadn't remembered seeing before. Someone should check the old roads. The girls talk about a cabin, about the men, but nobody listens to them. No signature, no date, just silence between the lines. Helena leaned back in her chair, the overhead light buzzing softly. Someone had known. Someone had tried to speak. And someone had buried more than just bodies out there in those woods. The old files smelled of dust, printer toner, and forgetfulness. Helena sat alone in the archive room beneath the Kizale RCMP detachment. 4 steel shelves, 2 flickering bulbs, and a single metal fan that hadn't worked since the Harper administration. The Redsky file was thinner than it should have been. Most were. Cases like Amber's were filed under missing, not criminal, which meant they were rarely followed up and never reopened, unless someone made noise. And in 1997, no one had made noise for Amber Redsky, except Eunice and Helena and her sister Naomi, until she disappeared too. Helena flipped through the report again. Photos of Amber, 15 years old, dark-eyed, head tilted just enough to suggest suspicion. Notes from Officer Donnie Price. No evidence of foul play. Girl previously reprimanded for truancy. Probable runaway. There was a single interview transcript with Eunice Redsky. Eunice. She wasn't the type to run. She was careful. She stayed close. Price. Girls her age have a way of hiding things, ma'am. Maybe she met someone. Eunice. She was scared. She said someone was following her. Price. Did she name anyone? Eunice. No, but she said it smelled like oil and pine. Price. Oil and pine. Eunice. Like a truck yard in the forest. Helena closed the file slowly. That smell. Naomi had mentioned it too. Weeks before she vanished. Late at night, after she'd started coming home shaken from volunteer shifts at the youth shelter. Something's off, Naomi had whispered one night. The girls talk, you know, about the woods, about men with names like wolves. Then go to the police, Helena had told her. I did. They didn't listen. Back in her office, Helena retrieved the bag of personal effects found near the hand. One item stood out. A moldy, water-damaged notebook, spiral-bound with faded butterflies on the cover. Amber's name was written inside the front flap in black pen. Most of the pages were blank, but a few had words. Scrawled, fragmented. A teenager's private language caught between fear and code. The man with the belt doesn't like when we talk. Eliza says he keeps pictures. They come in the white truck, no plates. They take us one at a time. The one they call Lobo is the worst. Helena stared at that name. Lobo, wolf, Spanish. That lined up with something Naomi had said in her final voicemail, months before she disappeared. Tell Mom I love her, and if I don't come back, remember that it was someone with teeth. He smiles when he's lying. Helena had dismissed it at the time as metaphor. A cryptic message from a scared girl. But now? Now it was a lead. She opened her laptop and pulled up internal records. Entered the nickname Lobo. No hits. She tried again under aliases, Spanish slang, and local reports, until one popped. Raul Espinosa, alias El Lobo, born in Juarez. Arrested in 1991 for human trafficking in Sonora. Released in 1993. Moved north. Known associate of Red Birch Logging Ltd., defunct logging company tied to illegal transportation routes near Kisolay. Last seen in northern Alberta, 2002. And then nothing. No extraditions, no prosecutions, just a blank space where justice should have lived. Helena leaned back in her chair. They'd known. Someone had known who was taking the girls. And they'd let him walk. That evening, Helena drove to the outskirts of Kisolay, where the lights thinned and the shadows grew longer. She parked outside a weathered one-story house tucked between two closed shops. The name on the mailbox, D. Price. She rang the bell twice. A minute later, the door creaked open. Donnie Price, late 60s, thinning hair, long retired, stared at her like a man looking at a ghost. Constable Dupree, he said. Didn't expect to see you. I need to talk, she said. About Amber Redsky and Naomi Dupree. He glanced over his shoulder. My wife's out. Come in, but just for a minute. Inside smelled like tobacco and old furniture. He led her to the kitchen and poured coffee like he still thought it was the 90s. Helena didn't sip it. You filed the report on Amber, he nodded, and 5 others like it. And you never looked deeper. I did what I was told. She stared at him. By who? Price rubbed his jaw. They said it was federal. Said we weren't to touch certain files. Said it would make the town look bad if we stirred up panic. Who's they? He didn't answer. Helena leaned forward. Was it about the logging camp? The trucks? His hands trembled slightly. He didn't look at her. Sometimes they came back empty. Sometimes not. Who is El Lobo? That got his attention. He froze, looked at her, finally. You don't want to chase that name, he said. I already am. Then pray to God you never catch him. The next morning, Helena returned to the woods with backup. Sergeant Will Gauthier met her at the edge of East Trail 42, his parka zipped to the throat and a thermos steaming in his glove. He was one of the few officers Helena trusted, a Métis man from Fort Nelson, quiet, steady, and unwilling to play politics with other people's grief. You really think there's something up there? He asked. Helena nodded. I don't think. I know. They hiked in silence through the snow-packed trail, past the ravine where Amber's remains had been found. The forensics markers still fluttered in the wind, yellow tape like ribbons tied to graves. By the time they reached the Red Birch camp, the sun was just beginning to break through the clouds, weak light filtering down between the pines like an afterthought. The cabin stood just as she'd left them, still, broken, watching. Gauthier walked through the first building. Someone's been using this. Yeah, recent prints. No names, no logs, no reason. They moved on to the second cabin, the one with the shackles and the carved names. Gauthier let out a low breath as he took it in. You weren't kidding, he said. No, Helena replied. It gets worse. She led him to the third structure, an old office shack built against a rise in the earth. A sagging desk sat in the center, covered in dust and bird droppings. Filing cabinets lined one wall, most of them rusted shut. But it was the floor that caught Helena's attention. The boards near the back of the room had been disturbed. She knelt and brushed snow and debris away. A trap door, iron ring embedded in the wood. Gauthier crouched beside her. You think this was storage? Maybe, or maybe it was something else. They pried it open together. The hinges groaned like something waking up. A narrow crawl space stretched below, maybe 5 feet deep. Helena dropped down first, flashlight sweeping across the low walls. There were mattresses, 3 of them, molded, stained, but intact. Crumpled blankets, a tin bowl, a rusted spoon, a notebook half buried under a mat. And across the far wall, burned into the wood with a lighter or knife. No one listens to us. Helena's breath caught. She picked up the notebook carefully and opened the cover. Inside were photos. Polaroids, girls, young, scared, some crying, some drugged. All photographed in that same room, same wallpaper, same floorboards, and in the corner of each photo, faint but visible, was a number written in marker, not names, numbers, inventory. Gauthier knelt beside her, face pale. Jesus Christ! She swallowed hard. They were catalogued. How many? She flipped quickly. 50 at least. Some faces she recognized, some she didn't. But on the final page, beneath a photo of a girl with her hair cut short and eyes swollen from crying, was a name written in ink. Naomi Dupree. Helena closed the notebook, her hands shaking. I was wrong, she whispered. They didn't bury her out here. Gauthier looked at her. What are you saying? She survived. Back at the detachment, Helena scanned the Polaroids into a secure case file and logged the notebook as evidence. The pictures were being cross-referenced with national databases. Missing persons, human trafficking victims, foster home runaways. 2 matches had already come back from cases in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Both girls were believed dead. Both had last been seen near highways with truck access. The threads were finally connecting. She sat at her desk staring at the picture of Naomi, bruised, terrified, alive. Dated August 1997, 3 weeks after she'd vanished. She had been taken, not lost, kidnapped, held, trafficked, and maybe, just maybe, she had gotten out. Helena returned to the Red Sky household that evening with a copy of Amber's notebook. Eunice met her at the door, still in a rocking chair, her eyes sharp despite the years. She flipped through the photos slowly, reverently, not flinching, not crying, just remembering. "She used to carry that spoon everywhere," she murmured, pointing to one of the Polaroids. "Said it was lucky. I buried one just like it with her mother." "I think she was trying to leave clues," Helena said. Eunice nodded. She knew no one was listening, but she kept speaking anyway. Helena hesitated. "Did Naomi ever mention anyone named Lobo to you, before she disappeared?" "Not to me, but she wrote letters." "Letters?" Eunice reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a shoebox. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them, all addressed to Amber Redsky, all written in a teenage hand. "She never mailed them," Eunice said. "Said they were practice, but she wrote every night." Helena opened one. The first line made her skin prickle. "If they find this, I'm dead. If they don't, then maybe someone will know what happened." That night, Helena couldn't sleep. She sat in her living room, the wood stove crackling, the town outside her windows buried in white silence. Snow fell steadily, blanketing everything again, like it was trying to erase what had just been uncovered. She poured herself a drink and opened Naomi's letter again. It ended with a line that stuck in her head long after the fire had burned low. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone." But he isn't. He's still out there. The man with the wolf's name. The town of Kisele liked its shadows. It had always been the kind of place where favors passed over poker tables, where secrets sank into snowdrifts and stayed there. For decades, men in uniforms and suits had looked the other way while indigenous girls disappeared. Some had done more than look away. They'd helped. Helena stood outside the Kisele Veterans Lodge, a low brick building tucked behind the fire hall. Tuesday nights were poker nights. The same men who'd worn badges in the 80s and 90s still gathered there, drinking cheap rye and pretending they'd never filed the wrong reports, dismissed the wrong families, or signed off on the wrong evidence. She adjusted her coat and walked through the door. The smell hit her first. Cigar smoke, whiskey, and mothballs. The laughter stopped as soon as she entered. 7 men sat at a round table, all white, all over 60. Among them, she spotted Robert Farnell, the former mayor, and Sheriff Glenn Rayner, now retired and well-fed. Rayner's belly pressed against the table edge as he raised his glass in mock salute. "Well, if it ain't the prodigal daughter," he said, voice thick with phlegm. Back from the bush with fire in her eyes. Helena kept her expression cold. "Evening, gentlemen. I have a few questions about the Red Birch Camp." "Now, why would you go stirring up that old ghost story?" Farnell said, leaning back. "Because Amber Redsky wasn't a ghost. Neither were Naomi Dupree, Eliza Cardinal, or Jolene Reeve." Rayner chuckled. "Girls go missing, Constable. That's not news. Half of them leave on their own." Helena stepped forward and dropped a manila folder on the table. Polaroids spilled out, faces frozen in fear, bruises visible even in faded color. No one laughed. "Found these under a floorboard," she said. "Your runaways didn't run. They were trafficked, held, photographed like livestock." The room went silent. Even the hum of the overhead light seemed to pause. Farnell reached for a photo, but Helena slapped his hand away. "You don't get to pretend to care now." Rayner cleared his throat. "That case was buried for a reason. You dig deep enough, you'll find names you don't want to see." "I already have," she said, "starting with Raul Espinoza." Rayner flinched. So did Farnell. Helena stepped back. "You're all going to be interviewed, officially, under caution. I suggest you start remembering who paid for those security contracts in 1997. She left them sitting in their smoke-filled circle, staring down at the evidence like it might start burning on its own. Outside, snow fell in fat, quiet flakes. Helena walked to her cruiser and sat for a moment, engine idling, eyes on the rearview mirror. Her pulse was steady, but her jaw ached from clenching. Her phone buzzed. "Gauthier, check your email. You're not going to like this." She opened the message on her onboard terminal. It was a scanned document, a personnel file, one she recognized instantly. Her father's. Sergeant Thomas Dupree, RCMP, retired 1999. Helena scrolled down. Her hands began to tremble. Assigned liaison to Red Birch Logging Ltd. Security Oversight Rotation, 1996 to 1997. Approved shipment clearances on behalf of Detachment C. Linked to unsanctioned asset forfeiture reports. She closed the file, blinked once. Hard. Her father had signed off on the routes the girls disappeared from. Had he known? Had he been tricked? Or had he been complicit? She remembered the silence in their house. The way he'd refused to talk about Naomi after she vanished. The way he'd retired early and moved to the coast without warning. Helena stared out the windshield, the snow falling heavier now. This wasn't just a cold case. It was her family's history, carved into pine and frozen in blood. Back at the station, she paced. The names were adding up. A network, a pipeline. The Red Birch Trail hadn't just been a mill route. It was a corridor. Girls came in, trucks went out, and the town? The town had been paid to look away. She picked up the phone and dialed Gauthier. "Will," she said, "I need everything we have on Raul Espinosa. Full border movements, aliases, contacts. You think he's still running things?" "I think he never stopped." There was a pause. "And your dad?" "I'll handle that." At 2 a.m., Helena returned home. Her boots left trails across her hardwood floor. The house was cold, dark, and too quiet. She made tea she wouldn't drink. Sat on the couch and pulled Naomi's Polaroid from her coat pocket. Her sister's eyes stared back at her from 1997, bruised but alive. She touched the corner of the photo where the marker number was written. Number 37. 37 girls that they had a record of. How many didn't get numbers? How many were buried without names? She looked out the window. The pines stood silent in the moonlight, still keeping their secrets, but not for much longer. The package was waiting on her doorstep, wrapped in brown paper. No postage, no return address, just her name. Helena Dupree, written in thick black marker, the kind used on evidence tags or warehouse crates. She stared at it for a moment before picking it up. The weight was uneven. Something slid inside when she tilted it. A cassette tape. And a note. "You said no one listened." "I did. N." She didn't move for several seconds. Then she went inside, locked the door behind her, and slid the bolt across the top. The air in her home suddenly felt thinner, colder. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Helena dug out the old tape deck from the back of her hall closet, the one her father used to play patrol logs on. It still worked somehow, the eject button groaning as it opened its dry mouth. She pressed play. The tape hissed, then clicked. "If you're hearing this, I guess you found it." Her breath caught. It was Naomi's voice. Older, rougher, but unmistakable. "I don't know where I am anymore. I think we're somewhere north. There's snow, always snow. They move us at night. I pretended to be asleep last time and caught a glimpse of a sign, Fort Nelson. That's the last place I remember. After that, there was a long drive. Cold metal floor, no windows, just noise and exhaust and the smell of pine and diesel." Helena leaned forward, heart pounding. "They call him Lobo. He's the one in charge. I thought he'd kill me that first week. Maybe he meant to, but he said I looked smart. Said I could help with records, so he kept me. Put me in with the older girls, the ones who keep the others quiet. I did things, said things. I told myself it was survival, but I'm not sure anymore. There are names, Helena. Local names. Men who came up on weekends. They brought girls back with them. Not all were from the reserve. Some were from cities. Foster care. Some didn't speak English. Some were so high they couldn't stand. I left a list. It's in the old ledger, the one Dad used, the red one. If it's still there, it'll be in the cabin, under the floorboards. I used to hide drawings there. He never looked. Don't trust anyone who knew him. Not all of them were fooled. Some were part of it. If you find me, please don't hate me. The tape clicked again. Silence. Helena sat frozen. One hand gripped the edge of the couch. Her tea had gone cold beside her, untouched. The red ledger. She hadn't thought about that in years. Her father's cabin was 40 minutes north, past the reservoir. He used it during hunting season, but it had been empty since he retired. No one had touched it in over a decade. She stood slowly, reached for her coat. By the time she reached the cabin, it was nearly 5 a.m. The sky was turning from black to ash gray. Snow drifted down steadily. The trail to the porch was still visible under a thin layer. No prints, no tire tracks. No one had been here recently. She stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the gloom. The cabin still smelled of gun oil and cedar. Dust coated everything. Her father's coat still hung by the door like it had been waiting. She walked to the corner of the main room where the rug had always curled at one edge. Pulled it back, pried up the loose floorboard. Inside was a small wooden space, a gap between beams where he'd stored emergency ammo and a rusted survival knife, and a book, red leather, worn spine. She pulled it out and opened it. Names, dates, amounts, dozens of entries. T. Cardinal, 1995, 1,200. L. Whitehawk, 1996, 1,000. N. Dupree, hold, special. Helena's breath froze. The names matched her case files. Each one was a girl. Each one listed like inventory, with dollar amounts. This wasn't just a ledger. It was a trafficking manifest. At the very back, in Naomi's handwriting, Lobo, true name unknown. Contacts, G. Rayner, R. Farnell, T.D. Helena stared at those initials. T.D. Thomas Dupree. Her father. She stumbled back from the crawl space, hand shaking. Wind howled through the chimney like a scream swallowed by time. She drove back to town with the ledger in the passenger seat like it might explode. At a red light, her radio crackled. Gauthier's voice came through. "Helena, I just got a call. You need to come in." Someone broke into the archive room. She turned the wheel hard, headed for the detachment. When she arrived, the front desk officer waved her through, looking spooked. "Nothing taken," he said. But it was deliberate, lock-picked. The drawer with Amber's notebook opened then closed again. Prints? Gloved hands. Helena walked into the archive. The air smelled off, like oil and metal. She stood in the room where someone had tried to undo her work and whispered, "They're still watching." They found the second body before noon. A snowmobiler had spotted something unusual off High Ridge Trail, near a collapsed hunting blind that hadn't been used in years. The RCMP dispatch call was terse and static-laced, but the urgency cut through. Suspected human remains, visible blood, location flagged, scene not secure. Helena arrived 20 minutes later, Gauthier already on site with 2 officers holding the perimeter. The snowmobiler was wrapped in a blanket in the back of a cruiser, pale and shaking. "This one's recent," Gauthier said quietly, leading her toward the blind. Blood was smeared across the snow in jagged arcs, pink in places where it had mixed with ice, dark in others. A trail led from the blood toward the collapsed wooden blind, where a mound of packed snow covered something uneven. They cleared the snow slowly, carefully, revealing a woman's body curled on her side. Mid-30s, long black hair, torn parka, a bullet wound to the chest. Frozen blood matted the surrounding snow like rotten velvet. Helena crouched beside the corpse, her jaw tightening. "Do we have ID?" One of the searchers thinks it's Lorraine Whitehawk. Missing 3 days. Last seen in town talking to someone outside the old grocery. Helena nodded. She remembered the name. Lorraine had been Eliza Cardinal's cousin. She'd been helping post flyers about the missing women, especially since the Amber Redsky case reopened. Now she was dead. Helena scanned the scene. "Anything else?" "We found tire tracks nearby. Deep ones, dual axle. Not fresh, but not from the storm 3 days ago either. Truck? Likely. Heavy duty. Could have been transporting something or someone." Helena stood. She looked out at the pines. It wasn't just a cold case anymore. Someone was still cleaning house. Back at the station, the autopsy report arrived within hours. Helena reviewed it in the forensics lab with the coroner, Dr. Marion Tso. "She bled out fast," Dr. Tso said. "Clean through and through shot, high-velocity round. Not military, but powerful enough. Likely fired at close range." "Anything else?" "She'd been hit recently. Fresh bruising, defensive wounds, fought back." Dr. Tso paused. She was scared, but she knew who did it. Helena nodded. That part was never written in the report, but it was always there, between the lines. That evening, Helena sat in her office with the red ledger open and Naomi's cassette tape playing again. She focused on the list Naomi had written. Names and code names. TD, her father. GR, Sheriff Glenn Rayner. RF, Robert Farnell. Lobo. But a new name stood out this time. M. Vasquez, handler, Dusty Spur Bar. Helena narrowed her eyes. That name didn't match any local officers, but it matched something else. She pulled out an old personnel file from a prior tip. The Dusty Spur Saloon had been a meeting place for truckers and smugglers in the 90s. It had changed hands several times, but in 1997, it had been owned and operated by Miguel Vasquez, still listed as missing since 2003. No forwarding address, no bank activity, no trace. Helena picked up her phone and called Gauthier. "Will, I need to check the last known address for Miguel Vasquez. He used to run the Dusty Spur. I think he was Naomi's handler." "I thought he disappeared years ago." "Yeah, and now people who were connected to this case are dying." They found the house that night, 47 Cedar Avenue. Helena and Gauthier parked a block away, approaching with flashlights off, weapons holstered but ready. The house was quiet, lights off, snow untouched. But the number plate had been tampered with, painted over, just enough to look legal. A trick. A cover. "This doesn't feel right," Gauthier muttered. They crept around the side and spotted movement inside, just a flicker behind the blinds. Helena stepped forward and knocked. "RCMP, open up." No answer. Another knock. Harder. "Police, we need to speak to the resident, now." Still silence, then movement. The back door. Helena darted around the corner just in time to see a man sprinting across the yard. She shouted once, but he didn't stop. Gauthier was already moving, chasing him through the snow. Helena ran into the house, clearing each room fast. Empty, cold, like someone had packed up in a hurry. In the living room, she found a stack of burned documents in the fireplace. Half-melted photos, scorched receipts, a piece of red leather cover. Someone had tried to destroy evidence, but a single photo had survived. It showed Naomi, younger, hair shorter, standing outside a truck with a man Helena didn't recognize. Until now. She turned the photo over. Monsieur Vasquez plus ND-1998. Miguel hadn't disappeared. He'd gone into hiding, and now he was running. Outside, Gauthier tackled the suspect in the snow and brought him back in cuffs. It wasn't Vasquez, but it was one of Lobo's former drivers, tracked through an old payroll record Helena had flagged days earlier. He was bleeding from a gash above his eye, nose broken from the fall. "What's your name?" she asked. He spat blood and didn't speak. She showed him the photo. "Tell me where Vasquez is." He looked at the picture. His jaw tightened. "Gone," he muttered. "He knew you were coming. Said it was only a matter of time." Helena stepped closer. "Where?" "Mexico. Chihuahua, probably. He's hiding with the others. The ones who used to move the girls." She stared at him, ice in her voice. "Then we'll follow." By dawn, Helena Dupree had made contact with RCMP Border Intelligence Services in Whitehorse and Interpol's North American Liaison Office. The evidence was overwhelming. Names, photos, ledger entries, and now a captured associate who'd confirmed an active smuggling route south into Mexico. The border had been porous, the movement deliberate. The silence? Engineered. She sat in the station's operations room. Lights dimmed, phone pressed to her ear. A senior official with Interpol Canada spoke in clipped tones. "If Vasquez is in Chihuahua, we'll need DEA coordination and Mexican federal approval. He's not on any extradition list. He's a ghost. You'll need hard proof and high-level authorization." "I have the proof," Helena said. "I have girls' names, shipping routes, and ledger entries showing active participation from within Canadian borders. This is more than a ghost. This is a pipeline." "Then prepare to go south. We'll push through the request." Helena ended the call. She turned to Gauthier, who stood reviewing Naomi's photo. Vasquez beside her, the truck's license plate just barely visible. The name of the logistics company on the door read, Arboleda Norte Transportes, registered in Ojinaga, Chihuahua. "We've got a company," she said. "If they're still active, they're still moving girls." "You really going?" Gauthier asked. Helena nodded. "I'm not stopping. Not now. Naomi's alive, and she's still trying to be heard." That evening, RCMP officials, Interpol, and the DEA held a virtual briefing. Agents from the US and Mexico joined the call, all reviewing Helena's evidence, the red ledger, the photo, the manifest codes. DEA Special Agent Kim Navarro, based out of El Paso, spoke up. "We've been monitoring Arboleda Norte. It's a front. The trucks run light southbound, heavy northbound, most likely fentanyl and human cargo. We've tagged one truck headed back through the Ojinaga border. Plate matches the one from your photo. Is Vasquez with them? Unknown. But the driver has ties to a brothel in the Zona Rosa district, known trafficking corridor." Navarro paused. "If your sister's still alive, that's where she'll be." 3 days later, Helena boarded a flight for Texas, then crossed into Mexico under official escort. The journey was surreal. Dust replacing snow, sun where her breath used to fog. She met with Captain Roberto Hernandez, commander of a Mexican federal police unit in Ojinaga. He reviewed the case file slowly, then looked up at her. "You've been carrying this for 16 years, he said. "But you don't look tired. You look ready." Helena's voice was calm. "We only get tired when we stop." They raided the Rose of Fire brothel at 2 a.m. It was a garish 2-story building on a back street in the Zona Rosa. Neon signs flickered above shuttered windows. Inside, music, heat, smoke, fear. Helena moved with tactical precision, her weapon low but ready, heart pounding not from fear, but from proximity. She kicked open a door at the end of a hallway and stopped cold. 3 women, all dazed. One collapsed, one shackled, one staring at her, wide-eyed and silent. Naomi, her sister, older, scarred, but alive. "Naomi?" she whispered. The woman flinched, as if the name itself had weight. Helena dropped her weapon and crossed the room. "It's me," she said. "Helena?" Naomi stared for a long moment. Then her lips moved. "About time," she whispered, before collapsing into her arms. Outside, the operation continued. 15 women rescued. 4 suspects detained. 1 driver escaped through the back alley, but the case was cracked. Inside a locked office, they found Miguel Vasquez's fake ID, burner phones, and coded route logs matching the red ledger. He had been there, and he had run. That night, Helena sat in a makeshift trauma tent beside her sister. Naomi slept under warm blankets, bruised and medicated, but breathing free air. Captain Hernandez stood nearby. "You've dismantled something bigger than you realize," he said. "This ledger? It connects to at least 3 northern Canadian routes. Girls moved from reserves, shelters, even government placements." Helena's voice was flat. "They never had a chance. Until now," Hernandez said. They gave Naomi her own room in a secure recovery center on the outskirts of Ojinaga. The windows were barred, not to keep her in, but to keep danger out. She slept most of the first day, sedated and malnourished, her skin marked by years of silence and survival. Helena sat beside her for hours, barely moving, watching the rise and fall of her chest like it was a miracle. On the second morning, Naomi woke up fully. "You cut your hair," she murmured. Helena turned, startled. "You remember that?" "You always said it made you look tougher." She smiled weakly. "I guess you were right." Later, over warm broth and soft light, Naomi began to talk, slowly, carefully, like each word still had sharp edges. "They took me the night I was walking home from the youth center. Same route Amber used, same truck, white cab, no plates." Helena's pen moved silently. 2 men, one with a Canadian accent, one with something harder. Maybe Mexican. They didn't talk much. They put a bag over my head, drugged me. I woke up in the basement of the Red Birch camp. She looked away for a moment. Her hands clenched the blanket. There were 5 of us in the first week, then 3, then 2, then just me. What happened? They sold the others. Her voice didn't break, but Helena's heart did. I lasted longer because I was older, smart. They needed someone to manage inventory, take down names, handle numbers. I was useful. Useful? Naomi's eyes were tired. I wrote it all down. The numbers, the men, their names. Sometimes I changed names to protect myself. Sometimes I had to smile at them. Pretend. You wrote the ledger? She nodded. Parts of it, the red book. I knew you'd find it. Helena sat back, stunned. You built the trail. I didn't build it, Naomi said. I just mapped it. Someone else built it. She told Helena about Miguel Vasquez, her handler for 3 years. He liked order, clean records. He hated messes. That's why he kept me alive, said I was too valuable to be ruined. And Lobo? Naomi flinched. He was different, quiet, rich. He didn't like being seen, but he liked hurting. He came less often, but when he did, everyone got scared, even Vasquez. Did you ever learn his real name? Naomi hesitated, then nodded. I think it's Cal Bishop. Helena's blood ran cold. From Kisole? The contractor? Naomi's voice dropped. He ran logistics. He met with Vasquez in person, came to the compound twice, always in winter, said it was just for inventory checks. But we knew. She paused. Helena, he knows you. He knows our family. Back in her hotel room that night, Helena stared at her laptop. Her screen displayed Cal Bishop's company records, obtained weeks ago. Bishop Contracting cleared routes through North Alberta and into British Columbia in the late 90s. Oversaw truck logistics for Red Birch, Northern Forestry, and 3 dissolved companies with shell accounts traced to Chihuahua. He'd been hiding in plain sight. She opened her inbox. 1 new message. From Gauthier. Subject, confirmed. Body. Bishop applied for a work visa to Mexico in 2003. Denied. Same year Naomi escaped. Found old security footage of him near Fort Nelson, 3 weeks before your sister's last photo. He's the link. He's the wolf. The next morning, Helena filed the formal request. A warrant for the arrest of Cal Bishop, on suspicion of conspiracy, trafficking, and obstruction in the disappearance of Naomi Dupree and others. Within hours, his home was empty. No car, no signs of forced entry, just the smell of cigarette smoke and open back doors. He was running. Again. That night, Naomi asked for one thing, to see the Pines again. "The real ones," she said. "Not the ones I dreamed of. The ones that held the truth." Helena nodded. "We'll go back, together. Even if he's still out there." "Yes," Helena said. "Especially then." Cal Bishop hadn't just disappeared. He'd prepared for it. By the time the RCMP raided his home in Kisale, they found burned hard drives, shredded bank records, and a set of international currency bundles, Canadian, Mexican, and euros, hidden in the back of a false drawer beneath his tool bench. He was a man built to vanish. But Helena Dupree had learned something in her search. Even ghosts leave footprints. She started with his family. Bishop had a cousin, Marcus Weller, who worked maintenance at the Kisale water treatment plant. Officially retired, unofficially a heavy drinker with a sharp memory. She found him at the Silver Pine Tavern, hunched over a glass, eyes red. He looked up as she sat beside him. "Let me guess," he muttered. "You're here about Cal." Helena kept her voice low. "I'm here about the girls." Weller downed his drink. He always thought he was smarter than the rest of us. Grew up poor, got rich fast. Said it was forestry money. But you don't make 6 figures hauling logs out of nowhere towns. "You knew what he was doing?" Weller didn't answer at first. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a faded envelope. He slid it across the bar. Inside, photos. One showed Cal standing beside Miguel Vasquez, smiling, arms slung over a crate labeled FN Inventory. Another, Cal with Sheriff Rayner, shaking hands at what looked like a mill fundraiser. "I was there once," Weller said. "Only once. Red Birch. He took me up to show off the operation. Said the girls were just cargo. Said it was cleaner than dope." Helena's voice was cold. "Why didn't you come forward? I thought he'd kill me." She leaned in. "He still might, unless you help stop him." That night, Helena filed the final link. A witness affidavit, naming Bishop as the top of the trafficking chain in the Red Birch ring. Interpol responded in hours. Bishop had been flagged crossing into Belize using a fake identity. Andrew C. Langford, same birth date, fake passport, Canadian backing. DEA agents in Chetumal had pinged his alias just 72 hours earlier, traveling by boat to Guatemala. He was running hard, but not fast enough. Helena knew where he was headed. Back to the roots, back to the Red Trail, the original corridor from the Canadian north to the southern edge of the cartel. 2 days later, she stood with Captain Hernandez and Gauthier on the tarmac in Belmopan, waiting for clearance to cross into northern Guatemala. "They think he's hiding in a compound south of Flores," Hernandez said. "Cartel-owned but small, discreet, not protected by government muscle." "What's he doing there?" Helena asked. "Same thing they always do," he said, erasing witnesses, burning records, preparing the next route. Helena stared down the runway. No more running. Before boarding the chopper, she called Naomi, still recovering in a secure Canadian facility. "I found him," she said. There was silence on the line. Then Naomi's voice. Steady, clear. "Don't let him disappear again." The helicopter dropped them just outside the tree line. Thick Guatemalan jungle, wet with heat. The opposite of Kisale's biting cold. But somehow, it felt the same. That same hush before violence. That same feeling that something was waiting beneath the surface. Helena adjusted her flak vest as Captain Hernandez signaled his squad forward. 10 officers. One objective. Cal Bishop was inside. The compound was built like a fortress for a man who feared ghosts. Barbed wire, concrete walls, a single watchtower disguised as a grain silo. From above, it might look like a farm. From the ground, it was clear. This was a holdout. They breached at 0240 hours. Flashbangs, shouts in Spanish, dogs barking. 2 armed guards tried to flee through the back. They didn't get far. Inside, Helena moved fast, heart pounding, breath steady. She cleared a hall, a kitchen, a stairwell. Empty. Then, a door, steel, reinforced, locked. She stepped back as one of the local officers placed a breaching charge. Boom, smoke, and behind it, Cal Bishop. Sitting at a desk, calm, sweating, unarmed. A passport and a burner phone in front of him. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were still cold. "Well," he said, "I suppose this means you found Naomi." Helena didn't answer. She raised her sidearm. "You hurt her." "I saved her," he said. Her finger tensed. "You trafficked her." "I protected her from the others, kept her alive, made her useful." Helena stepped forward, teeth clenched. "You called that mercy?" "I called it business." She nearly pulled the trigger, but instead she said, "You're under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy, murder, and obstruction of justice." They didn't resist extradition. Interpol and DEA took Bishop into custody within hours. He would face charges across 3 countries, with Kisele first in line. Too many names in the ledger. Too many bodies in the snow. No more hiding. Helena sat in the holding tent outside the compound with the red ledger on her lap. She opened to the last page. One Bishop had written himself. "Some cargo cannot be erased. Some blood doesn't wash out." Under it, in Naomi's handwriting, "Then let it stain everything." When Helena returned to Canada a week later, she found Naomi waiting. Still recovering, still haunted, but standing. "I heard they caught him," Naomi said. Helena nodded. "He talked." "Did he apologize?" Helena shook her head. "He never said her name, not once." Naomi looked out the window. "Good," she whispered. "Let silence be his punishment." The snow was falling in Kisele again, but it no longer felt like a burial. It felt like a witness. Winter held Kisele in its grip again. But this time, Helena Dupree wasn't chasing ghosts. She was walking beside one. Her sister, flesh and blood. Scarred but standing. They hiked together through the pines, the trail packed firm beneath their boots. The trees looked the same, but everything felt different. Brighter, clearer. The place where Amber Redsky's hand first broke the snow was now marked with a stone, handmade by her family. Carved into it were her full name, her Cree syllabics, and the words, "She was never forgotten." Naomi stood in silence before it. She took a bracelet from her pocket, red, yellow, white, and laid it beside the marker. "She made this for me," she said quietly. "I never got to wear it." Helena's voice was gentle. "Now you have." They walked on, deeper into the trees, past the old red birch trailhead. No tape now, no markers, just the quiet breath of wind through branches. Naomi stopped at the collapsed shack, the old holding site. She crouched and touched the foundation stone. "I remember every girl's name," she whispered. "Even the ones who didn't get numbers, even the ones who didn't get out." Helena handed her a notebook. Inside were 63 names, real names, reclaimed. Naomi flipped through the pages slowly. "Do you think anyone will believe it?" she asked. Helena looked at her sister, at the scars, the survival, the strength. "They will now," she said, "because you're the one telling it." Months later, the National Inquiry cited the Kisele case as a turning point. The Red Birch trafficking network was exposed in full. Cal Bishop was extradited and charged with over 40 counts, with trial pending. Miguel Vasquez was captured trying to flee Honduras. Charges spanned decades, but the victory wasn't in the courtrooms, it was in the clearing of the pines, where crosses and prayer bundles now marked the earth, where families once buried hope and now reclaimed it. At a press conference in Prince George, Naomi took the podium. No uniform, no apologies. just her voice. We were called missing. We were called runaways. We were called ghosts. But we were never gone. We were stolen. And now we are heard. Later that night, Helena and Naomi sat by a fire outside their mother's old home. Above them, the stars pulsed clear through the cold sky. "Do you still hear them?" Naomi asked. "The girls?" Helena said. Naomi nodded. Helena looked to the forest. "Not as cries anymore," she said. "More like singing." Naomi smiled, soft and sad. "Good," she said. "Let them sing."